Is Gambit beyond saving? Is it worth saving? Some of y'all may say yes, and some of you might say no. As for me, I actually enjoy Gambit. I think it's a great concept with decent execution and something that not many other games can say they have, a pvpve game mode. Now, I think Gambit is an essential part of Destiny, something that can morph the two major food groups of the game into one. Gambit was released with Forsaken back in 2018 and saw a few updates along the way, but that has slowly but definitely stagnated since. And so has the community's engagement with it. But Bungie's perspective on players' lack of interest comes from engagement rates. But engagement is down because meaningful content updates to the mode have been completely missing in action. The neglected mode in any twid or twab, on some he who shall not be named type beat. Like they're afraid to mention Gambit as if it's some bad omen. No new armor, hardly any new weapons, no new maps, and as a matter of fact, maps being removed. You get the picture. Sure, we did get something, a shred of info on the future of Gambit and the state of the game, with the Dreaming City map being re-added at some point in the future, and some more enemy variety, but that's really it. As I mentioned in my Breakneck video, there's a chance for legacy weapons to return to the Gambit loot pool, with perhaps some new origin traits. But is that enough? Not necessarily, but it does show that there are eyes on Gambit in the studio. So today, I want to give some ideas on what could possibly change the trajectory of Gambit's future and possibly revive the mode that's on life support. So let's begin our list of playlist changes for Gambit. So let's get the obvious one out of the way, something I've already talked about in the past and I think has been spoken to death about, but that's adept weapons and legacy weapons receiving new origin traits. Guys, what is one of the primary reasons people grind out trials and grandmasters? Adept weapons. The benefit of having higher level stats, equipable adept mods, and a much more noticeable masterwork bonus is phenomenal. Something that has players coming back to a mode over and over is giving the player the chance at obtaining a statistically stronger weapon. Trials and grandmasters haven't seen massive changes in the past while, but they're some of the most engaged with modes. The difference between the few is meaningful rewards. Without meaningful rewards, in a loot-based game, a mode is destined to fall off. I haven't in recent memory seen a weapon drop in Gambit that made me say, wow, I should play this mode for 3 more hours straight, and hope I can get this weapon to drop. You may ask, Rana, those adept weapons drop in a much more difficult version of that playlist activity, the semi-endgame content of Destiny. Well, this leads into my next point, a competitive Gambit playlist. There are a lot of logistical changes that would have to come with a competitive Gambit playlist, and I get that, but that is not a stretch of the imagination. When PvE activities have an enhanced Masters version of a given activity, and PvP has a competitive-based mode, take pieces of each and incorporate them into Gambit. In Grandmasters, you have a limited amount of revives, lower player health and a level cap, and a plethora of modifiers to increase that difficulty. Now here's an idea. Since you can't technically have limited revives in Gambit, say for example instead of only losing all of your motes when killed, if every player in the fire team wipes, then have the progress bar on summoning the primeval drop down a tier. That's harsh, I know, but this is a competitive endgame activity. It is not supposed to be easy. There has to be a high risk, high reward factor involved. Now if a team wipes, how are they supposed to make any sort of comeback? And not just leave the activity? Easy. We take a mechanic that is already in Gambit, high value targets. High value targets are mote-loaded enemies that help bring balance to a comeback. Increase the health of the high value target, increase the amount of motes that are dropped, just an idea. It's something that could increase the difficulty but retain a form of balance. Now I mentioned modifiers. Perfect. Let's jump into point number 3, rotating modifiers in Gambit. Guys, this is a given. Elemental surges, weapon class surges, elemental threats, party modifiers like skulls and Halo, empath, subtle foes, ashes to ashes, lightning crystals, attrition, prism, the list goes on. Having a weekly rotating set of modifiers can help spice up the meta and give a new challenge. Now, granted, modifiers typically add more challenge to a mode, and many consider them to be a nuisance. But that's the point. Last week's Gambit will feel different than next week. There's variation and variety. The way you tackle engagements must be thought out to some extent beforehand. Your loadouts can vary given the circumstances. This even gives room for Guardian-based modifiers, such as upon a Guardian's death during an invasion, it spawns a stasis turret, or they drop double the orbs of power, or double the motes even. Specific mechanics can behave differently when the primeval is ultimately spawned. Speaking of mechanics, point number 4. Let's talk about mechanics, baby. Anyone who has played Gambit knows the mechanics like the back of their hand, and that's because the fundamental mechanics of the mode have seen little to no adjustment. Introduce lighter, raid, and dungeon mechanics to the primeval fight. Currently, the process goes as such: deposit motes to spawn a primeval, kill the envoys to enable the damage phase, at minimum 3 damage phases. Change that up. Link nodes together to spawn envoys, then enter damage phase. Inspiration from the Season of the Witch's seasonal activities can be used. Link all the arc crystals, transport the solar crystal, shoot the void crystals. Any of the mechanics from Altars of Summoning can be used to great effect in Gambit to enter a damage phase. Make each match feel different from the last by making the player run a roll during the final boss. Increase the primeval's health. Boom, a light dungeon boss is the primeval. Of course, some sort of balance with the time it takes to complete such a challenge needs to be had in order to not have matches last longer than 10 to 15 minutes, but fuck it, let it happen, we need variety. Now, as for variety, this is another thing that has been beaten to death and is actually coming soon. Sorta. New maps. New content for Gambit is a must in order to have people come back. Bring back both the old Gambit maps and create new maps. We have had new destinations added to the game since Gambit's launch, so there are definitely new places to have new maps take place. I'd love to see a map take place in Savathun's throne world, or within the pyramid, something underwater in Titan's oceans. With the next expansion, inside the Traveler, or on Neptune. There are plenty of destinations to explore with different aesthetics and enemy types to encounter. New bosses could go hard too. Tormentors is a primeval? Zoink, Scoob. But those are just a couple of ideas for what can be done to Gambit in order to breathe life back into it. And this is just a massive list of copium, I get that, but I ask you this. If all these changes were implemented, would you be more inclined to play the mode? I personally really enjoy Gambit, which seems like a hot take apparently, but it is what it is. I dig the concept and the execution is relatively well done. It's just neglected and not given its proper attention. What are some ideas that you would like to see brought into Gambit? If you play Gambit, what do you like about it? And if you don't like it, what are the reasons that prevent you from engaging with it? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I hope this sort of resonated with some of y'all. And who knows, maybe someone from Bungie would see this and pass it on to someone. I don't know. Instead of just saying shit mode, give some valid criticisms that aren't just deleted. Give some ideas that can be reasonably implemented. Anyways, that's all from me, gang. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you wish. It helps a lot more than you know. Take care. I'll catch y'all on the flip side. Deuces.